All right. We still do have a couple more topics here. So here's something I want to talk to you guys about. This is a discussion I definitely want to have because it's it's one that I've seen again, unfortunately, and I don't mean to. I'm not. I don't want this conversation to be positioned, and to be honest, I don't want any of the conversations. I've been striving to ensure that none of the conversations we're having today are positioned as defensive ones, because in my opinion, there's just no need to be defensive about any of this. I think it's just a matter of talking about what is, and then just speculating what could be. And one of the things I feel like needs a little bit of clarification, but it also gets me excited. And that's the thing. There's really no need for defense from anybody, in my opinion, because if anything, it's like people who are maybe feeling a little bit nervous or worried or concerned, they should realize this is actually a good thing. Like, this is good. What am I referring to? I'm talking about Sony acknowledging that the PS5 is entering the latter half of its life cycle. Now, I just want to say that this is something that has also led to immense fear-mongering and a lot of doom and glooming on the internet, unfortunately. And I think what made matters worse is there were some people actually misquoting it. I think IGN got caught misquoting it, where they said the PS5 is entering its latter stage, which led so many people to think that, like, oh my God, like, we're almost done. But in reality, what Sony said is the latter half. So let's think about it. Sony says we're entering the latter half of the console life cycle in 2024. The console came out in 2020. Well, that means we have at least 4 years of full support. However, it's safe to say that the PS5 will be supported for many years to come, probably well beyond 4, because Sony's not walking away from the PS5 anytime soon. You're saying, isn't that just semantics? No, that is not semantics. No, because you have to understand that the word half is incredibly important when talking about the life cycle of anything. To where saying latter stage, right? Stage, you replace the word half with stage, it paint like you don't know. Like, it doesn't, saying latter stage does not communicate to you that we're halfway through. That's the problem. And the reason why that's important is because think about it. When Sony says we're halfway through the PS5's life cycle, what they're really telling you is we have 4 more years. That's nearly half a decade, dude. That's why it's so important to focus on it being latter half, because that's a long time. And here's why I think people should be excited about this. And it makes me so sad to see such fear-mongering surrounding PlayStation right now and so much negativity, because people are just completely overlooking or forgetting something critical to the PlayStation lifecycle. And that is that for the past 2 generations, and there's only been 4 total generations of PlayStation consoles. So for half of the existence of the PlayStation console, for the past 2 generations, the best of the best came during the second half, during the latter half. When people look back at the PS4 and when people look back at the PS3 with, just this fondness and like, man, what a generation that was, people are remembering most of the time the second half. Don't get me wrong. These games, or these consoles, the PS3 and the PS4, had very good games in the first half as well. And so has the PS5. To me, that's the weird, like, again, I'm not trying to get defensive here. There's no reason to, but I wholeheartedly disagree with the notion and the insinuation, or just the straight up saying that, man, the PS5 has had no games, or the PS5, the games that have released have been disappointing. To me, I'm sorry, like, to each their own, but I don't agree with that at all. I think it could be better, but it always could be better. But I think when you compare it to like some of the previous generations, and even if you compare it to some of the competition, some, not all, but some of the competition, even with current, previous generations, I think that's crazy that people come to that conclusion. But again, I'm not here to defend anything. What I will say is that people should try to remember what happened with the PS3, and especially with the PS4, dude. Think about it. The PS4 launched in 2013, and the final year of it, I mean, in terms of like, before the new console came out, was 2020. So that's a good chunk of time. That's 7 years. It's when you look at the PS4's life cycle from 2013 to 2020, I want you to think about which years Sony had produced the best results in terms of games, in terms of like just really kind of firing on all cylinders and delivering what people ultimately look back on as this is what defined that generation. Of course, in the earlier years, you got like infamous Second Son. Unfortunately, the Order 1886 didn't seem to do too well. Yeah, like Bloodborne, of course, absolutely. But really, it started in 2016. It started with not only their showcase, but with Uncharted 4. And then you go into 2017, you get games like Horizon, right? And I'm sure there's some games I'm forgetting from 2017, but then you think 2018, you get God of War, and you get Spider-Man. 2019, Days Gone, Death Stranding. 2020, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us Part 2, Dreams. I mean, this is where I'm saying, like, we could just as easily look at the first 3 to 4 years of the PS5. Well, so far, like the first 3 years, really, right? And it's like we're kind of on the same trajectory to a degree. And I don't know, man. I know it's hard for people to view it that way. I understand. I understand why it's hard for people to view it that way because they're like, well, that's great, MBG. You're right about that. The second half of the PS3 is when Sony really got it together and started delivering all these great games. And the PS4, they killed it. But right now, we're not seeing anything. You know, like right now, we don't know what to expect except for Wolverine and Death Stranding 2. And those games are going to be awesome. But especially with Wolverine, like we have no idea. Well, we kind of know when it's supposed to release, but technically we're not supposed to know when it's going to release. So it's like, I get it. You know, I understand why it's easy for people right now to feel so doubtful, and especially people who just aren't fond of PlayStation, to kind of hop on the bandwagon of just fear mongering and downplaying. I get it. But I just think I'm not the only one that genuinely feels like the best years of this generation, like this is the beginning. Like we are entering the latter half. That's when the best, most memorable, most defining years are going to occur. And the only way I could see that being untrue, to be honest, the only way I could see that being untrue is if Sony truly did mess something up internally. And I mean mess it up to a degree in which it's like we've had such development problems and we screwed up so many of our teams with the live service pivot that we're going to just try to get out anything we can. But really, now we're looking at PlayStation 6 games. But I don't think that's the case. At least I hope that's not the case, right? But there's nothing there right now that gives me that feeling that we're going to find out. For example, like I saw a lot of people were saying, a lot of people, but some people were thinking that Naughty Dog's next game is actually going to be a PS6 game. And I'm like, well, I like that. To me, that's so insane that it's like, there's no way. I refuse to believe that because in order for that to be true, that this studio would have had to have been mismanaged to oblivion for that to be true. Where it's like a 7 to 8 year life cycle of a console, and this studio was mismanaged so bad they couldn't even put out one new game. I refuse to believe that. Like if we get to the year 2028 and the PlayStation 6 comes out and we still haven't had a new Naughty Dog game, then yeah, I will be like, wow, I can't, like I would still be hard for me to believe. It's hard to even imagine because it's like, how does that happen? I think they might be a little bit behind for sure, you know, maybe a little bit behind schedule, but I don't know, that would be ridiculous, dude. Because that would mean that this entire time they weren't working on something else. Okay, so Capono, you're saying, bro, you ain't seeing Naughty Dog until PlayStation 6. Well, my question, in all seriousness to you, is like, what makes you feel so confident in that? Like, what makes you feel so confident that yeah, we're not seeing them till next gen? I'm being serious. Like, I'm just wondering, like, what is the logic behind that? Because I don't know, maybe I'm just seeing it. Maybe I'm seeing it a different way. Jakey Steer saying it's because the recent cancellation of Factions. They're making some Uncharted remakes. Dude, if Naughty Dog's next project is a remake, I will be checking out when it comes to Naughty Dog, bro. Like, if Naughty Dog's next announced game is a remake, I'm scratching them off the list, and I just no longer care. I'm gonna just be checking out. Like, it's insert. All right, I'm out. I'm a head out SpongeBob meme. You know, like there's just no way. Yeah, that I agree with. You're saying a new game from Naughty Dog would take like 6 years or so. Well, here's my thing. The question is simply this. Was Naughty Dog and Sony dumb enough? You're saying why MBG you love remakes though? Well, listen, I like remakes, but there has to be a limit. And Naughty Dog has reached that limit, dude, where it's like remasters, remakes, enough. We need a new game. You can do remasters and remakes later on when after you release that new game, but we need a new game. Period. We need a new game. But the question is, what was Sony dumb enough? Was Naughty Dog dumb enough to say, okay, we're going to pursue this multiplayer game, and we're not going to develop anything else alongside of it except for remakes and remasters? That does not compute in my brain. Like, that would be such piss poor management that whoever, like Neil Druckmann would have to be fired, in my opinion, if that, or somebody would have to be like axed. Because if that's because it's the idea of like, how could a studio with that pedigree put all their eggs in that basket, not knowing if it's even going to work? That would be truly wild, man. And I will say this, if that is what ends up happening, if it turns out that we're going to see Naughty Dog's next game revealed, but it's like not coming out for, like, it's going to be a next gen game basically, I will feel so disappointed in Sony that was allowed to happen, that I will have no choice but to believe that this is why Jim Ryan retired and Connie Booth was fired. Because that truly is unacceptable, man. Where it's like, look, I'm okay if I got to wait till like 2027 or something, because it's like, fine, you guys need the time. It's a brand new game, hopefully. But, oh man, that would be very, very, yeah, I wouldn't even, I'd have to take a little bit to process that one. Where's Blue Boxes abandoned? Stop asking me about that. I don't know. Sounds like MBG is putting all of his eggs in one basket. Well, no, because I will say this. I want to make something clear too. I'm not saying that if Naughty Dog was mismanaged, then that means all of PlayStation Studios was mismanaged to the same degree. No, I do think this is a make or break year for a Sony showcase. It is. It is, man. Like, look, PlayStation fans understand that it takes time to make these games, to make great games. PlayStation fans went through the PS4 generation and they went through the PS3 generation. Like, we know that these games take time. But the biggest difference between this generation so far, where we are right now, and the way that those past generations occurred, like I talked to you about the second half, the biggest difference is that Sony was willing to show us, like, hey, this stuff isn't coming like now, and maybe not even the next year or two, but we're working on it, and you can look forward to it. Please be excited. You know what I mean? Sony's not doing that anymore. They haven't done that. Like, dude, Sony didn't do that since 2021. Think about that. Sony hasn't done that since 2021. And even when they did that in 2021, the only games that they did it for were Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine. And so when I say that this is a make or break year for Sony in terms of a showcase, it is. I mean that. I do. If Sony doesn't bring their games this year, I don't care if it's in May, I don't care if it's in June, I don't even care if it's in September. It's fine. If I need to wait till September, then I'll wait till September, but you better bring the heat. Because I'm not having another shit year of announcements. I'm not. Like, because if that happens, Sony won't. How is Sony gonna make it, man? You know what I mean? Like, that's a serious question. Like, if Sony can't deliver an exciting showcase with games, you know, like, people are already being so doom and gloom and dire. They were doom and gloom and dire after last year's showcase. To me, it is like, okay, Sony, like, it's time to show. That's all. And I don't mean to sound so entitled. It's not. I don't even think it's entitlement. It's just. I think there's logic there. It's the logic of it. You know what I mean? Where it's like, even I would be like, if Sony can't show new exciting games at their showcase this year, then even I'm going to question, what is the point here then? Like, what are you guys doing with the PS5? Like, this is unacceptable at this point, you know? But I'm rooted. Like, to be honest, like, I am not feeling that that's going to be the result, because it's like, how could that be the result? I mean, maybe it could be. I always got to keep my mind open. Excuse me, like any possibility. But it's like, I have been paying attention to PlayStation's internal studios, following them very closely, and it seems pretty clear to me that, like, putting Naughty Dog aside, right? Like, 'cause who knows what's going on with Naughty Dog? We'll find out eventually, but there's still so many other things. So, and they don't all, to be clear, I want to make this clear too. They don't all have to be massive games, right? They don't all have, like, if we could get one new massive game shown off and then some other like mid-sized games, like for example, the rumor claiming that there's going to be a new Astro game this year, like that's great. Like that would get me excited. Yeah, exactly. If they don't have new games to show, how are they going to market the Pro? Maybe, hey, maybe that's the play, dude. Another Astro game alongside the PS5 Pro to kind of mirror what we got at the launch of the PS5. Ghetto Guy, you're saying LMAO. I knew it would be a week or two before MBG wanted to see more games after the state of play we just got. Well, because Ghetto God, you have to understand we're having a different conversation. The conversation we're having is not about games that we're playing now and that we're going to be playing in the next few months. We're having a conversation about Sony laying down the roadmap for the remainder of this generation. You know, like we are entering the latter half. And to be fair, like Death Stranding 2 and Fizzant, like I already told you, man, that's awesome. Well, first off, I think Fizzant is a PlayStation 6 game. But Death Stranding 2, yes, it was amazing to finally see that again. It was amazing to see that again. But listen, that state of play was really good. And even for as good as that state of play was, I think you can all agree with me when I say, like, Sony's still holding something big, like a lot. Like they're barely scratching the surface. I'll be honest, man. It feels like, I'm not saying it's like Sony's hiding. It's not that they're hiding. It's just they're trying clearly to wait as long as they can. And I think that's smart because it's like, time it right. Timing is everything. But when you see what Sony did at that state of play, like, okay, here's Stellar Blade. We didn't make that game. Here's Silent Hill 2 Remake. We didn't make that game. Here's Rise of the Ronin. We kind of helped make that game, but it's mostly Team Ninja. You know? Here's Dragon's Dogma. And it's like that. That's all great. Like, this is great. I love it. Here's Helldivers 2. There you go, right? There's Helldivers 2. And that's all great. And they're like, oh, here's Death Stranding 2. Oh, we didn't make Death Stranding 2 either. That's Kojima's game. Here's Fizzant. We're going to help Kojima make this game for the PlayStation 6. Presumably. And you like, and it's like, that's all awesome stuff. Like, yes, this is amazing. Hell yeah, that's the best state of play I've ever seen. But there's still like that massive void where it's like, wait, hold on though, but where are your studios? You know what I mean? Like, that's all it comes down to is it's just, no matter how exciting it is and how good it is, there's still the lingering void of, but where is PlayStation Studios? And I am convinced at this point, maybe Sony saw this coming, dude. I don't know. Maybe Sony saw this coming where they're like, think about it. If they're having trouble with their finances right now, you know, they just did their earnings report and it's not ideal. Maybe them not rushing these announcements could be the very thing that turns it all around. You know, could be the very thing that they're like, you know what? It's a good thing we didn't put a fire under these studios the past 2 years and we just let them cook and we gave them time because now we need these announcements. It's interesting because I remember people telling me this past couple years. They're like, listen, MBG, you're not going to see Sony come out and make these big announcements when the PS5 is doing phenomenal. You're not. You're not going to see them when they're riding that wave drop all these announcements because there's no need to. It's when they hit that slowing down point where the wave is starting to come down. It's starting to come down finally, and they don't want it to flatline. So they don't want to, reach that point. Then they're going to come out and they're going to make all the big announcements. I'm like, you know what? If Sony's first state of play of the year is anything to go by, yeah, I think that might be true, man. We'll see though. We'll see. I don't want to get ahead of myself. It's hard not to when we're speculating like this, when I'm speculating like this, but we will see. I'm of the mindset that Sony is more likely to succeed in showing us a proper roadmap this year than fail. Because if Sony is telling us again this year that like we're still not ready, I would be pretty scared. I'd be like, yo, if you're not ready in 2024 to even just show these games, what is going on? We'll see though. Keep expectations in check and you won't be disappointed. Yeah, that's a tough one, man. I will say that's a tough one because it's like, I'll tell you this. If Sony announces a showcase in the next couple months, I will have a different feeling than I did last year. I will behave differently than I did last year, where I will be excited and say, yes, hell yeah, another showcase, let's go. But I will also immediately then say, okay, Sony, now you have to show me that you remember how to put on a good showcase. I'm not going to assume. I'll be honest. Like, I'm not going to assume that uh my expectations are going to be met. I'm not, because I did that last year, dude, and I really did learn last year. Like, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure many of you remember, I was 100% convinced. You could not convince me otherwise that this was going to be anything but an incredible showcase. Like, I was talking about, yo, Sony's going to bring out the heavy hitters. Let's go. And I couldn't have been more wrong. And it was tough to accept that shit, man. I didn't see that coming at all. Um, so with that in mind, it's not that I'm not going to be negative or not be excited. I'm just going to, yeah, hey, I did dress up as Snake, but MGS was there. Okay, that's all that matters. It was there. I'm just saying that, yes, and Sony did skip a showcase in 2022. I'm just going to go in saying this could go either way, guys. Let's see how it turns out. All right. It's time for Totokism to take hold. Dude, watch Hiroki Totoki be like, showcases, they're too expensive. Cut them. Yeah, I agree. You're saying that state of play gave us a good vibe. I think so. Yeah, that's why it's disappointing to see such doom and gloom right now and such negativity, because I feel like Sony really did get off to a good start, and I'm still feeling that vibe. But, the reality of the financial reports and Sony just being candid with their investors uh, seems to be what is kind of dampening that right now. But if there's something that I have learned, even just this year so far, but certainly in years past, is that these things fluctuate, man. They go up and they go down. They go up and they go down. Sometimes, you know, overnight, sometimes over the course of a couple weeks, sometimes over the course of a couple months, but that's just the nature of it, man.